Welcome back. The Day of the Vow traces its origin as an annual religious holiday to the Battle of Blood River on December 16, 1838. The besieged Voortrekkers took a public vow, or covenant, together before the battle, led by Sarl-Ciliërs. In return for God's help in obtaining victory, they promised to build a church and forever honor this day as a holy day of God. They vowed that they and their descendants would keep the day as a holy Sabbath. During the battle, a group of about 470 Voortrekkers defeated a force of about 20,000 Zulu. 3 Voortrekkers were wounded, and some 3,000 Zulu warriors died in the battle. 2 of the earlier names given to the day stem from this prayer. Officially known as the Day of the Vow, the commemoration was renamed from the Day of the Covenant in 1982. Afrikaners colloquially refer to it as Dingena's Day, a reference to the Zulu ruler of the defeated attackers. No verbatim record of the vow exists. The version often considered to be the original vow is in fact W.E. Gelu's ca. 1962 translation into Afrikaans of G.B.A. Gerdner's reconstruction of the vow in his 1919 biography of Sarl-Ciliërs. We stand here before the holy God of heaven and earth, to make a vow to him that, if he will protect us and give our enemy into our hand, we shall keep this day and date every year as a day of thanksgiving like a Sabbath, and that we shall build a house to his honor wherever it should please him, and that we will also tell our children that they should share in that with us in memory for future generations. For the honor of his name will be glorified by giving him the fame and honor for the victory. The official version of the event is that a public vow was taken by a Trekker commando on December 16, 1838 at Ngum River, Blood River, which bound future descendants of the Afrikaner to commemorate the day as a religious holiday in the case of victory over the Zulu. In 1841 the victorious Trekkers built the Church of the Vow at Pietermaritzburg, and passed the obligation to keep the vow on to their descendants. As the original vow was never recorded in verbatim form, descriptions come from the diary of Jan Bantjes, possibly written on December 9, a dispatch written by Andries Pretorius to the Volksraad on December 23, 1838, and the recollections of Sarl-Ciliërs in 1871. A participant in the battle, Dewald Pretorius, wrote his recollections in 1862, interpreting the vow as including the building of churches and schools. Jan B. Bantjes, 1817–1887, Pretorius' secretary, indicates that the initial promise was to build a house in return for victory. He notes that Pretorius called everyone together, and asked them to pray for God's help. Bantjes writes that Pretorius told the assembly that he wanted to make a vow, if everyone would agree. Bantjes does not say whether everyone did so. Perhaps the fractious nature of the Boers dictated that the raiding party held their own prayers in the tents of various leading men. Pretorius is also quoted as wanting to have a book written to make known what God had done to even our last descendants. Pretorius in his 1838 dispatch mentions a vow in connection with the building of a church, but not that it would be binding for future generations. We here have decided among ourselves, to make known the day of our victory, among the whole of our generation, and that we want to devote it to God, and to celebrate it with thanksgiving, just as we promised in public prayer, by Andries Pretorius. Contrary to Pretorius, and in agreement with Bantjes, Ciliërs in 1870 recalled a promise, not a vow, to commemorate the day and to tell the story to future generations. Accordingly, they would remember the day and date, every year as a commemoration and a day of thanksgiving, as though a Sabbath, and that we will also tell it to our children, that they should share in it with us, for the remembrance of our future generations. Ciliërs writes that those who objected were given the option to leave. At least 2 persons declined to participate in the vow. Scholars disagree about whether the accompanying English settlers and servants complied. This seems to confirm that the promise was binding only on those present at the actual battle. Mackenzie, 1997, claims that Ciliërs may be recalling what he said to men who met in his tent. Up to the 1970s the received version of events was seldom questioned, but since then scholars have questioned almost every aspect. They debate whether a vow was even taken and, if so, what its wording was. Some argue that the vow occurred on the day of the battle, others point to 7 or December 9. Whether Andries Pretorius or Cyril Cilius led the assembly has been debated, and even whether there was an assembly. The location at which the vow was taken has also produced diverging opinions, with some rejecting the Gum River site. The Day of Reconciliation is a public holiday in South Africa held annually on December 16. The holiday came into effect in 1995 after the end of apartheid, with the intention of fostering reconciliation and national unity for the country. The date was chosen because it was significant to both Afrikaner and African cultures. The government chose a meaningful date for both ethnic groups because they recognize the need for racial harmony. The celebration of the Day of Reconciliation can take the form of remembering past history, recognizing veterans' contributions, marching and other festivities. The origins of the celebration for the Afrikaners goes back to the Day of the Vow, celebrated on December 16, 1864 in commemoration of the Voortrekker victory over the Zulus at the Battle of Blood River. For African people, the date has been significant as one of both peaceful protests against racial injustice and of the founding of the more militant Umkhonto we Sizwe by the African National Congress, ANC, on December 16, 1961. Nelson Mandela and the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission chose a day that was special to both ethnic groups in the country in order to work on healing the damage done by apartheid. But like with any other public holiday that is not Christian-based, the leaders of the ruling party will use these events sponsored mostly by the government to blame the white population of the country for all the ills that plague the country, even 25 years after the advent of democracy. The ruling party and other leftist parties that align with the ruling party will use these events not to promote reconciliation and admit to their own mistakes towards the people that voted them into power. The politicians actually use this public holiday to promote division between the different races that make up the South African population. The evil whites are to blame for everything, and the governing party will use this day to degrade the progress made by the people on ground level. The people on ground level work together to improve the country and make it a better place for all. It is just unfortunate that the politicians will destroy what the people of the country have achieved without the interference of those in power. Reconciliation comes from all sides and not just one side. As long as politicians preach hate and degrade one part of the population, reconciliation will never be possible. By changing the name of the public holiday, the governing party try to destroy the heritage of a minority group. But this minority group will still and most honor the vow made so many generations ago, as it is part of their history. Thank you for watching and remember to subscribe. Have a great day.